Good day and welcome to this episode of Technology Enhanced Learning, the show that features brief summaries about research and innovation in the area of computer-based education. I am your host, Lilith Verdigo from the Ateneo de Manila University in the Philippines. Today, we have the pleasure of speaking with Dr. Luan Wong. Dr. Wong is a professor at the Faculty of Education Studies, Universiti Putra Malaysia. She has extensive teaching experience in educational technology, teacher education, and teaching methods. She regularly conducts teaching and learning related training courses for educators. She is an active and passionate researcher and has published more than 200 scholarly papers with a special focus on teaching and learning in ICT. She served as Principal Associate Editor of the Asia Pacific Educational Researcher Journal and the Associate Editor of the Research and Practice in Technology Enhanced Learning Journal for about 8 years. She was the former president of the Asia Pacific Society for Computers and Education. So Luan, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Didi. Thank you very much for the invitation. And I'm really pleased and grateful for being able to join everyone this afternoon.
Thank you. So Luan, your recent work is about something that's very close to everyone's heart, the impact of COVID-19 on our students. Over 1 billion learners worldwide were affected by school closures, and schools and universities had to somehow continue to provide education. So we had to ensure some level of academic continuity. Can you tell us, first of all, what Universiti Putra Malaysia did to provide academic community despite the campus closures?
First of all, I'd like to give you a little bit of context of what happened in Malaysia during the height of the pandemic. Our first lockdown happened on the 18th of March 2020, and we had about 4 days prior notice before we had this lockdown. And during that time, the main concern of the university was to get the students all to leave the campus very quickly before the lockdown happened. And academicians, all staff were prohibited from entering the campus and to stay home. By that time, we actually had started 2 weeks of our semesters. So we had face-to-face classes, activities on campus already. And what happened was the university decided that from 18 March onwards, we were going to be given a short break, which means that the academic calendar, the university academic calendar would be tweaked, and we were given a short break. And during that short break, we had time to redesign our lessons and also our activities, our assessments, and so forth. At the same time, during that point of time, the university decided that we had to have a very kind of like clear guidelines for the instructors on how to conduct fully online lessons. And the guideline also helped and encouraged us to do alternative assessment, because prior to this, we were all very familiar with the traditional kind of testing, tests, examinations, and alternative assessment was the way to go forward during that point of time. And we had also, during the short break where we all had to stay at home, the university had arranged for many webinars, which were really useful, where all the experts in the university on online learning, they were gathered and they gave us training. And I was one of them who was involved in this training. So that was something that was happening at that point of time, and we were really helpful. We were really grateful that this was given at the time when we all needed such guidance.
You know, I was very curious about when you talked about. I know this is already somewhat off script, but I was very interested in when you were talking about the sort of the guidelines that your university issued, because our university had to do something similar. So we also had to undergo a training program that prescribed things like, similar to what you said, that how much synchronous time, for example, was encouraged, and what were the different forms of alternative assessments. So I was wondering if you could give an example of what would a traditional assessment be versus what would an alternative assessment be as prescribed by the university under the circumstances.
Well, the traditional kind of assessments that we were all so used to were, of course, the tests, where students would come to class and we have kind of like pop quiz and pen and paper assessments, and students would be in class doing the examinations, where at the end of the semester we have this 3-week examination week, and students have to come for the exams like 1 hour or 2 hours. But when we switched to alternative, it meant that the student had to do the assessment online. And it wasn't really easy for us because we had not done any online kind of assessment. But we were given the freedom or liberty to do more than that, where students' presentations, students' discussions, we had debates with our students. These were all considered as assessment, and they were all accepted. Even open book examination, take-home exams, where students had to not sit for an hour kind of exams, but maybe 24 hours, these were all accepted by the university and considered to be part of the formal assessment.
Okay, thank you, Luan. And what do you think were some of the advantages of, or some of the benefits of online learning? Because your study pointed to both benefits and challenges. So let's talk about the benefits first. What were the benefits of online learning?
During the lockdown, myself and Dr. Maslina, who was the other instructor, we had this unexpected circumstances to conduct a study. We didn't actually plan to do the study, but because of the situation, and we decided that it would be worth and meaningful to get some information to help us with how we were going to redesign our lessons. What we did was we had a very short survey to find out from our students what was their internet access, or how was the internet access like. And we found out that 30% of our students had very poor internet coverage at home. So all our students were at home. And students come from all over the country, and we have many students who are located in the rural areas. And because of that, we decided that synchronous kind of learning would not be too useful. Mm-hmm. And we decided that we were going to record all our lectures, and we uploaded into the learning management system, where students could access it any time of the day where they feel that the coverage is better, probably at night, and that would be helpful for students to learn at their own pace. So flexible learning time was one of the themes that emerged from our qualitative data. And the second point that we actually discovered was students had this drive to learn on their own, so student-driven learning. Because when we record these lectures, some students find that they may not be able to understand fully when they have this access the first time looking at the video recordings, and they would make effort to repeat and to look at these materials over again in order for them to be able to understand better. And the third advantage was positive learning opportunities. Students explained that they had these unexpected learning opportunities where they got to know more about the technology, the learning apps that the instructors were using. They mentioned that they wouldn't have known about Zoom, about Loom, our recording apps that we use to record our lectures, Microsoft Teams, and so forth. They felt that this was all new to them, and the new knowledge that they gathered or they acquired throughout the course with us, they felt that they could use this new knowledge and skills in their life and to apply this when they go to schools.
Thank you. You mentioned that you started with a survey to find out what kind of internet connection your students had. This is something we did also. I imagine many universities do this as well. So aside from the challenge of a poor internet connection, were there other challenges, other types of challenges that your students experienced or your faculty experienced for that matter?
All right. What we found that there were 4 main challenges. Like I mentioned earlier, there was this poor internet connection. Many of them were all from the rural area. And this rural area had very poor coverage. Well, the students were well equipped with the technology. They had their laptops, they had their handphones. But the poor internet coverage hampered their learning. Synchronous learning was seen as something that was not feasible for us. The next point that we discovered was poor self-control. And students admitted that they had very poor discipline because during lectures, they would kind of switch off the cameras and the instructors would not be able to see them and they would be walking about and not pay attention. This was a main concern and they were concerned. They found that there were also distractions at home where students had siblings, who would be noisy at home and so forth. So this was kind of like some challenges that students face. The third point was the unconducive physical learning environment. Many of our students didn't have proper tables and chairs at home for them to sit down and to learn. And this was a problem that we didn't realize until we asked our students to share with us their challenges at home. And the last point that I like to share was the feeling of helplessness and also burden. Students had problems striking a balance between their academic life and also their responsibility at home. And many of these students, being the eldest in the family or their family would expect them to be involved or to do the house chores. And they felt that it was time for them to join a lesson and the family said, oh, you have to do the house chores or you have to look after your siblings and so forth. So that was something that they were having some problems. They were affected emotionally in the sense that torn between which do I choose? Do I actually fulfill my responsibility as a student or do I fulfill the responsibility of being one of the elder siblings in the family? So that was some kind of eye-opener for us because prior to this, we didn't really talk to our students or find out because when they were in campus, everything looks good. And when they are at home, and these are the real issues that actually cropped up and hampers their teaching and learning process. So in my opinion, these challenges were really important to me as an instructor because when we design our lessons, you have to take into consideration the learner characteristics, which would actually kind of help you mold or shape how you want to conduct your lessons. So that is a lesson that I've learned, not only to do it during the online lesson, but when you're having face-to-face as well. You really have to find out, talk to your students to get information that would help you shape how you want to move forward with your design of the lessons.
Actually, what you said segues very well into the next question I was going to ask, which is, right now the world is transitioning back to on-site learning. And therefore, what are some of the lessons that you have gathered from the COVID experience that we can take with us as we move forward?
I think as academicians, we have to be flexible. We have to look forward that it's not about having 100% face-to-face interactions with our students, but giving the freedom to our students to choose if you want to be in class face-to-face or if you want to be learning remotely. Because sometimes students, it's not that they don't want to be in campus, they don't want to come for class, but because of the constraints they are having. For example, in my first lecture, I had mentioned that we were going to have face-to-face interaction for the first lecture. And 2 days prior to that, one student contacted me and said that he had contracted COVID and he couldn't come, obviously. And I said that not to worry, we will then do a hybrid learning environment where you could join us remotely. So that became like a norm where I had given the freedom to the students. I said, well, there are certain weeks you be in class. There are certain weeks that we're going to do face-to-face class remote lessons where if you can't come. And there were times when the majority of the students, even though they had the option of learning remotely, they decided to be in class. So that was really good. It means that they really want to be in class, but because there are certain restrictions where they cannot be in class. So we have to accommodate those kinds of unexpected situations. I also felt that it was important for these students who were following us remotely to be able to see what's going on in the classroom. The way that the camera was mounted on the ceiling in the classroom was that it was only showing the instructor because the camera was located at the back, at the top of the ceiling. So what I did was to improvise a little bit. I had my handphone camera. I switched on Zoom, and it was facing the class where the students would be able to see their classmates in the class. I felt that was important so that it could kind of like make them feel a little bit closer to the class rather than just looking at the instructor. And I do feel that this is the way forward in many years to come.
Thank you, Luan. My last question is about maybe something for young researchers. Okay, I think the last 2 years have given us a wealth of data and information about teaching and learning online under such stressful circumstances and so on. For young researchers who want to develop their research practice, what do you think some of the open questions are that are still worth examining, especially in the open questions from COVID-19 and maybe related issues as we go forward?
We have to embrace the unexpected and embrace technology as much as we can, and to learn as much as we can about our learners. How do we actually move forward? How do we ensure that the learning, there's no loss for the students? It's a good area for everyone to look into, especially we as instructors. How do we design our lesson to ensure that students are still engaged in our classroom? How do we make them still interested in our lessons despite all these constraints?
Thank you very much, Luan. It's been a very interesting talk, and I think there's a lot more that we can explore, we can learn from this experience. And I think what we have learned so far and what we will continue to learn will inform our teaching practice as all of us move forward. Once again, thank you for being a part of.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the invitation.